Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of our very own fee-only certified financial planners. Please note this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know all the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. Before we jump into today's question, a shout out to our extraordinary YFP financial planning team that makes this segment possible. Your Financial Pharmacist offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to pay off your student loans, make the right investment decisions, or simply build a solid financial plan, we'll help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from Jake in Hamilton, Ohio.
Hello, my name is Jake from Hamilton, Ohio, and I'm wondering about the different IRA options that are out there. I'm a recent Ohio Northern University graduate, go Polar Bears, and have been blessed with a residency position at AVA in West Virginia. I am trying to decide between starting a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. For the Roth IRA, I like not having to pay taxes on the back end, which is a very great benefit. For the traditional IRA, the ability to deduct my contributions from my taxable income, therefore decreasing my future monthly student loan payments, is enticing. Also, not having an income limit is nice so that I can continue utilizing the traditional IRA as I start making a full pharmacist salary. What insights do you have and which options may be best for my situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Jake, for submitting your question to be featured on this week's Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast. Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually glad this question is about an IRA and not like a taxable account. That's one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make, and I know why it happens. But it's typically you want to start with things like IRAs and like a Robinhood account or something like that. So Jake, props to you to kind of for kind of thinking this way. There's obviously a lot of factors, that kind of, go into this question. And one of them being, debt, student debt, if there's credit card debt for residents. We typically see residents often take a step back from, their, from a financial perspective, just because they're typically moving and maybe flying a lot because of interviews and things like that.
Yeah.
So I would obviously put some stock into that before even funding an IRA. But obviously, when we talk about investments, it's time in the market versus time in the market. So you can, get an IRA, a Roth, or a traditional open. There's a lot of benefits for having a Roth open for 5 years or longer, with regard to a home purchase and things like that. But if we break this down, obviously the two main options here are going to be the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA. So quickly, the Roth IRA is money, or is an account, an IRA that's funded with after-tax dollars. So that means, you get paid your paycheck, money sits in your account, you put $1,000 from your checking account into a Roth, and that basically has already been taxed. So that money grows tax-free. And then when you retire at age 65, it comes out tax-free. The traditional account, on the other hand, is the mechanism's the same. You get paid your check, and then the money sits in your account, and then you put $1,000 in there. Now, as a resident, because you make less than $65,000 as a traditional IRA, anything, if you're single, you make less than that, you can deduct that on your taxes. So come tax time, that $1,000 actually gets deducted. So if you make $40,000 as a resident, now the IRS basically is taxing you on $39,000. So that's the pre-tax mechanism there. So then that money, again, grows tax-free, but when it comes out when you're 65, it's taxed. So it's either tax going in or tax going out. Again, as a resident, because you're probably making between $40,000 and $50,000, you'll be able to get those deductions that you probably won't be able to do post-residency. So hopefully you're going to be making kind of the six-figure income. Now, as a resident, you're probably in that 12% tax bracket. It could, that's what I'm estimating for your taxes, where when you are going post-residency, it doubles. It goes to 24% tax bracket. And I think the other option is, or the other thing is, paying the state taxes. So I think all things being equal, this is why a lot of people will say at a lower income just to pay the taxes now. So, pay your 12%, that grows tax-free, and then you distribute it, tax-free in retirement. But obviously, again, a lot of the factors, there have to be examined, in terms of your strategy and things like that. So, the other thing, you would consider is, Jake, if depending on how old you are, that you're going to retire to a state that has no income tax, maybe it doesn't make sense to pay the taxes now. Maybe you pay them in the future. So there's just a lot of nuance there that goes into it. And I kind of go back to, all things being equal, I kind of go back to like a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B in terms of pre-tax to after tax, and those accounts. And most people will have a lot more pre-tax just because that's kind of the default with a lot of the 401ks, 403bs, et cetera. So that's kind of the, what I would be looking at with regard to the IRA options out there.
And I think, Tim, great point on the state income tax piece. Often something we don't think about when answering a question like this and making, general comments and education. But I think that just speaks to some of the nuances that can go into one making a decision and how that can be different from one person to another. So I do like, though, regardless of the direction Jake goes, and a shout out to ONU as a polar bear. I like that he is thinking about this and being intentional about this as he's making this transition into residency and really asking questions, curious about the differences, trying to optimize strategies. And I think in the long run, while this one decision, of course, will have implications, I think that desire to learn and that desire to get started is going to pay off dividends in the future. So shout out to Jake and credit to him for being intentional and seeking out a direction of this part of his financial plan going forward. Jake, thank you again for taking time to submit your question. We appreciate it. And as a small thank you, we're going to be sending you a super comfy YFP t-shirt. And to the YFP community listening, if you'd like to have your question featured on a future episode, please go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask YFP or shoot us an email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Have a great rest of your week.